Welcome to the Trailbreaker Podcast. I'm Aaron Feinberg. In this podcast, I explore what it takes to be a trailbreaker. Through intimate conversations with people carving new paths across the landscapes of business, art, and sport, we dig in on how to excel across seemingly disparate endeavors. What drives people who manage to succeed multidimensionally? Is it how they think? Is it meticulous planning and follow-through? Or is it some measure of delusional optimism? My guest today is Sam Alba, co-founder of Dagger, a modern CICD platform for software developers. Before starting Dagger, Sam ran the engineering team at Dagger. He's originally from France, but has been in California since 2011. We talked about how managers are really a service to their teams, how it's okay to leave a company and not okay to stay for the wrong reasons, and how when you start a company, every time you talk about it to people, it sounds like a bad idea. Sam, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining the show today.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
So we have known each other for quite some time, back when you were at Dagger and you were Dagger's first employee. So tell us a little bit about your experience with Dagger, and then we'll get into kind of what you're up to now.
Yeah, sounds good. So I joined Dagger back in the days when it was still called .cloud. So it was a small startup doing a platform as a service. I actually moved to California to join this company. It was in early 2011. We were 5 people total in the company, including the founders. Initially I joined this company to do whatever needed to be done, as you can imagine, in a startup of only a few people. And along the way, I did several different things, built the product, and went into management at some point. So I was actually the first manager of the company. It was not by choice. It was really by necessity for the company. And so I accepted the role. I started to manage people, and my priority switched from, shipping features to what can I do for the people in the company to help them ship features or just be well in the company, in their day-to-day work.
And let me just jump in real quick.
Please.
So for folks who are familiar with the world of that Dagger's in, they know exactly what Dagger is and does. But for folks a little more removed, tell us what Dagger is and what a container is.
Yeah, so Dagger implements this notion, as you said, this concept of containers, and so you can imagine a software container being roughly the same thing like a physical container, where you use physical containers to put all of your stuff and have a standard way of moving supplies. It can be on a boat, on a truck. Software containers are exactly the same thing for software. So a software has a lot of libraries, dependencies, a lot of different code, different language. It can have a lot of stuff, and putting all of that into a container that can be moved in a standard way actually allows you to simplify the development on your machine, deploying your code on a cloud server, always by using this exact same container format.
And are the end users of these containers, are they people like me, just individual users, or are these companies that would then use containers to store their information?
They are usually any company that needs to produce software. So they are usually software developers, mainly, or infrastructure engineers, managing the infrastructures, managing the code that other developers are writing. And
was Dagger the first company to start working with containers, or was this something that was in play before Dagger, and Dagger just kind of took it in a different direction?
No, so containers existed in the Linux system, and actually even in past Unix systems. We had a notion of jails and similar things than containers. But the containers that Docker used and that most people use today were in Linux long before Docker. They were not something widely accessible in a sense that, it was several small primitives that you had in a Linux kernel, but that were kind of invisible from most people. And Docker, the product, made containers easy, and that's the simplest way to explain what Docker did in the first place.
Okay, so it took something fairly complex and simplified it.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. And so you started off, you moved from France, and yep. You worked with Solomon, the co-founder, and some of the other a few beginning employees. Yep. And then eventually, where was your last role at Docker?
So my last role at Docker was in 2018. So I was VP of engineering. I was leading several teams. I was involved in a lot of different products, the enterprise product, at some point the cloud product. We had a lot of back and forth in redesigning the organization a couple times. So my team kind of scale up in the early days, shrank later, then had to scale up again. So that was kind of, we also changed CEOs several times. So along the way, every time you have a new boss, basically the org has to look different. It's important. And my role was, how can I shield the team and the people I'm responsible for so they can, still do their job and not be really impacted by that. So I would say the later years were a lot spent on my side by shielding people and explaining and doing some management up and down, and on the side too, obviously. So that was actually a big reason for me to look for a change at some point, because something that started along the way, like roughly during that time in late 2017 to early 2018, was, okay, I spent a lot of time doing management. I joined this company as a software engineer to write code, and my passion initially is to write code, and I ended up doing a lot of management. And I asked myself the question at some point: what do I want to do? How do I want to spend the next 10 years? And this question actually took me a lot of energy and a lot of brain cycles, I would say.
And I think that's I want to dig into that a little bit more, because I think that is something that I see with a lot of clients, whether they're in engineering or product or sales, marketing, whatever the function, right, is where you started, and what maybe drew you in, and then you start moving through the ranks and you get to a certain level of seniority, and now you're managing and you're leading and you're not so much doing. And before we kind of talk about that many cycles that it took for you to maybe shift, what was that process like for you? I mean, did you like it along the way in terms of leading and managing, or did you always prefer doing code, and the management side of things was just something that came along with the spot you were at the company? Give me a little more sense of how you felt about it all.
Yeah, absolutely. So initially, so the way I looked at it, well, to answer the first direct question is, I really enjoyed the time when I was able to do both. Actually, I was able to code a bit and be responsible for the team and help them. And also it took me quite some time to ramp up on the management side, because I didn't have a management experience before that. And I was thinking, should I read a lot of books, like where do I find the keys? And I realized I learned something about myself, which is that I have a lot of natural abilities to manage people, and mainly because I feel that I understand them more easily than some other people who want to be managers and they don't really understand. It's not really natural for them to understand what the team needs. So I would say at some point, I stopped writing code entirely just because I didn't have time. And my thinking is, as soon as you become a manager, your first priority is the team. So as the team gets bigger and is big enough to take 100% of your schedule, so be it. You cannot make space to do something else. It's very important. And I also developed some very strong beliefs into what a manager should do and who a manager should be in a company. And for instance, I always consider that managing people doesn't mean being the boss. I don't really like this term. Being the boss doesn't mean much to me. It's very important to understand that the manager is a service for the team. Basically, it's a tool for the team. If someone in the team cannot do their work or doesn't feel good or is feeling that they are not working on the right thing, they should talk to their manager, and the manager should solve it. The manager should not implement some extra amount of constraints for the team. And it sounds really stupid to say, but along the way, I started to set things up in the company, and it took me several years to understand a few things also, but as the team scaled, at some point I talked to other managers in other companies. I also interviewed managers, I hired directors along the way. And so it gave me a lot of data points into how people do things outside. And I realized that the basic things I just said are actually not well understood by other people out there. And it's actually very hard to be what I call a good manager. That said, it's very subjective. A good manager, what I consider a good manager could not be a good manager for someone else. So it's also about a different specific style. But the feedback I got in all those years at Dagger was pretty positive in the way I was doing things. So I feel confident about what I learned.
And I think that your statement about, maybe this stuff seems silly to say, it's 100% not, because every single day, whether it's in a coaching session or whether it's a running trainings for new managers or managers that have been, moved up the ranks and now managing bigger teams, or strong ICs who are deciding whether they want to go into management track, the skills, amazingly enough, it's not rocket science, but what is rocket science is how to apply them and how to do them at the right time, with the right energy, with the right connectivity to the other person. And that, while there's steps and formulas and approaches, you can't deliver it in that way and have it go very well with people. You have to be fluid and agile and fluent. And I think that, that's where the practice and the humility and the skills and the checking in with your end user, i.e. your direct reports, on how you're doing is really important. And I think that, there are people who are maybe natural leaders. However, I think managers is a set of skills that anyone can learn to do, but they have to be willing to realize it's not a snap of the finger and then you're there. You don't just arrive.
Yeah, for sure. I actually spend a lot of time also, training people from the team. I always think that promoting managers from an existing team is always better than hiring an external manager and trying to fit their style into an existing team that's already functioning in a certain way. It works too, but I think it's even harder to do. And the problem is promoting someone and training someone to then at some point promote to manager takes a lot of time. It depends on the individual. But yeah, I did both actually. And it took me a while at some point to, when it was time for my team to have an extra layer of management between me and the team and forming a team of several managers and all of that, I started to force myself to explain how I was doing things and why, and trying to convince other people that that was the right thing to do. Because before that, when you're the only manager and the team is small enough, you just do things. You say, hey, what about we do a certain thing? Hey, I got feedback in the team, and what about changing this and that? So yeah, training managers, especially people who didn't manage before, and they really want to do it, you have to convince them that this is the right thing to do. And sometimes they actually convince you that you should change the way you do things, which happens as well. I think the style of a manager should always be questioned by the team. Otherwise, you cannot do your job, basically, right? So yeah, I had a lot of opportunities to think about what I was doing and why, and explaining that to people. So that was interesting too.
And so you move up the ranks, you're VP of engineering, and then you're at this sort of decision spot where you were talking about it just a few minutes ago, where you had some cycles to sort of really figure out what you were doing, what you wanted to be doing, bigger picture life stuff. So take us back to that time, and let's hear a little bit about what you wrangled with, and then ultimately what you decided.
Yeah. So at the time I was, I was fine keep managing the team, because I think for me the company at the time went through a lot of up and downs, from a business point of view, from a product point of view. It happens in every single company, I guess. And for me, it was so important to keep doing a good work as a manager and helping the team to still perform and be happy in their job. I didn't really think about leaving at that point. I was at some point, I was thinking about what if I had an opportunity to leave, what would I do? And then a lot of things happened. We, as I mentioned, we changed CEOs. We actually had Solomon Hikes left, I think late 2017, something like that. He's a really close friend. I talk about my new company after that, but he's now my co-founder, and so he was a close friend back then, and already, and he was also the founder of the company, and so for him leaving the team, I could see how the early days were not there anymore, and now I had a very strong feeling that I was doing it's almost like I joined a new company and be a work that I didn't really like, and with also a new CEO on top of that, and the new CEO also brought a lot of new people on board. At some point, I had the feeling that I was less critical for the org. I could just transition the org and it could work. At that time, I also had directors under me, so I had I think at the peak I was running a team of close to 100 people. With directors and managers, and I had 8 direct reports to run this org, and it was a lot of work, but at the same time a lot of teams were autonomous enough. So I was thinking, okay, if we need to go into yet another reorg and reshuffle all of that, it can actually happen without me. And this is when I started to have a conversation with my boss of the time, who was the CEO of Dagger, the new one, and I was basically saying, hey, I have time, I don't have to leave right away. I don't want that to be a problem for the company after 8 years, 8 of my time spent in this company. I have time, and I just want to inform you that I'm gonna leave at some point. Not sure when, not sure to do what, but and I had a lot of support, and that was great. So I always tell everyone in my team. In the past, I always told people it's okay to leave. It's not okay to stay in a company for the wrong reasons. And I applied that to myself. I said, hey, I'm going to leave, and it's fine to talk about it, right? And I saw in the past that a lot of people are afraid to have this conversation. They're afraid to be fired for some reason. I don't understand why. So that there are a lot of things, and some people just say, oh, I'm about to leave, goodbye, and they just take their bag and leave, or like give a 1 week notice. No, so that was not my thing. I was like, okay, I'm going to leave at some point, not sure when, not sure to do what, but let me know how I can help to make this easy. And we started this I think in Q1 2018, and I started to think about my next move.
That process of leaving in a good way is really important. I think you highlighted it nicely, and it's interesting because I've coached a lot of folks who through the coaching process get to this point where they think the right move is to move on, or the right move is to get on a different team within the company, but either way, there's some change that needs to happen, and I think that it is very normal for that to happen all the time. It changes the norm, and it's really about how do you do it, and do you handle it with the right intention? Do you communicate at the right time, not too soon, not too late? Do you make offers to share the institutional knowledge that you have that would benefit whoever's taking over? Do you try to set the team up in the best way possible? Do you make yourself available for a few touching points after you're gone? Like whatever the right move is, just being thoughtful and considerate in the right intention is all that's really necessary. And as a result, I feel like a lot of folks, they go off and they try new things. Some of those things work, some of them don't. And sometimes they boomerang back, right? And I feel like any good company who had a good employee that left in a good way would be wise to welcome that person back if they boomerang, back in a few years. And whether it was folks at Google or Yahoo or some of these other companies I worked at where that was in fact the case, and the door was always open for these folks. And I think you're right to say, you do the hard work and you do your cycles and you figure out what it is you really want. And then when you're clear, it's very important to then go and have those conversations. And I think sometimes folks don't spend enough time getting clear, and then they make hasty decisions that don't land well with the other party, or they wind up making a decision they're ultimately not very happy with. So I think your process of really digging in is probably had a lot to do with why those conversations went well, and ultimately why you landed in a spot where you are now. Yeah,
definitely. And this, I agree with everything you said, and it's really what I'm trying to. It's the thing I'm trying to convey to people. Well, right now, actually, we have employees at this new startup, and I'm trying to tell that to people right away, like saying, hey, it's fine to leave, not a problem. We don't want people to be staying for the wrong reason, but also explaining them what you just said about, also helping the company back. So the company can help you to leave, but you should be helping the company by, giving enough time, not trying not to have too much impact, negative impact, when you go. And I think it's very important to me. Also figuring out what to do, because at some point when I started this transition, we actually reorged my team at some point so I could be less critical to everything, right? And I even started new projects before leaving the company to, some things that needed to be researched and tested. And since I had a lot of historical data about the company, the customers, and everything, I was trying to help like in a bunch of ways, and also you helped me a lot actually during this transition. I want to mention it because you were a big part of that transition, in a sense that I was, like everything I mentioned so far is just about the company. I mean, it's big. It's where you spent all of your time, right? But then there is the rest. Like, who am I as an individual? What do I want to do in life? Knowing that working for a company is most of your time, right, during the year, even more time than you spend with your family, for instance. There is a big question of, okay, after 8 years, what do I want? Who I want to be in the next, 8 or 5 at least. And yeah, I think working with someone, a coach like you, was very, 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 very important to me. And actually, after leaving, a lot of people ask me about this transition, how I was able to manage it. And a lot of time, my answer was, well, I know someone who can help if you need. So I wanted to mention it.
Well, look, it's a pleasure, and it's, anyone who knows the sort of reasoning for this podcast knows that the primary motivation was to highlight the folks like you, and you don't always know what your impact is with your clients, and thankfully, I get to stay connected to a lot of them, and they refer on, and that's the biggest testament, right? Is when someone that I've worked with then speaks about me highly, or is willing to share something like this. So again, I appreciate that, and it's really amazing to watch conversations that we had. Ultimately it's up to you to decide what you're going to do with those conversations. And sometimes I won't hear from my clients for a while, right? So you went off and you made decisions, and we didn't stay connected the whole time, and then boom, right? Then it's like we reconnect, and you're then sharing all the things that you have put to action since those conversations. So it's so great to watch the cycles and then what the output is.
Yep.
So you made some change, right? So you ultimately, as you mentioned, you set the team up in a good way. You stayed around to sort of help to make sure your historical institutional knowledge gets passed on. You did a few little side projects and some things to additionally sort of help the company while that transition was happening, and then you exit. So then what happens after you leave?
So actually, before I left, I was thinking that I would not be able to not have a professional activity. So I started to interview in the last few months while I was still employed. Actually, everybody knew I was trying to be, everybody at the exec level at least, because I didn't want to, scare the team or scare anyone. That was very important to me as well. But what I mean is that it was not a big secret. And so the problem I had was I didn't know what to do. Dagger was very visible. My name was fairly known in the industry. I mean fairly, because honestly, it's not. I'm not really. I don't like to be exposed usually. It's not my style, and so at least it was. I was not like I'm not a public face or anything, but at least in the industry, customers and Docker users and people like that knew who I was. And when it was known that I was looking for a change, I started to have a lot of opportunities. So without doing much, I started to have a lot of options on the table in front of me, and a lot of different options. It was not always the same one. It was, I don't know, CTO in a startup, VP of Eng in medium, larger companies. Even actually, I had an opportunity to be a VP of engineering in a public company, to lead a pretty large team, larger than what I was doing at Dagger, and also opportunities to join like a few people company and have a big, possibly a big impact. I say possibly because you never know until you do it, but that was the plan at least. And so I thought that interviewing for different companies was going to help me decide what I wanted, and it actually produced entirely like the opposite effect. So I moved from great, I'm gonna have time, I'm gonna do something new that I like, to I'm gonna have time, but it's even worse now. I don't know what to do. I'm completely lost. And so I remember we talked together back then, and at some point I didn't know what to do. I was and I had to resolve it because I couldn't stay in that situation for weeks and months. And so what I ended up doing was to to think about what were my priorities in life. What did I want? Like, did I want to manage a big team? Did I want to make a lot of money? Did I want to to work on a specific product? Did I want to work with specific people? So those were the kind of things I went through, and I started to sort them actually and score them. And at some point, I ended up with 3 priorities. And I realized that, and I sorted them actually, and I realized that the priority number 1 was the people I was going to work with. Priority number 2 for me was the topic I was going to work on with those people. And the third one was money. Money is but it was really a third one in a sense that I just wanted to have enough money so I could sustain my way of life, but that's it. I didn't want to do a 10x on my wealth or anything like that. I was just thinking, if you work, at least you need to not spend your money, And so that was my rule. And I started to, then it was much easier from that point to talk to those companies and know how they rank against your priorities, And I remember that at some point, I think you gave me that advice at some point, was to take some time off. And I remember back then you told me, if you create some empty space in your brain, you will see that the solution will appear on its own. I still remember that, and I followed your advice. I actually turned down every single offers that I had back then. I left Dagger in good terms, I think. And I took some time off. I did nothing at all. I didn't have any plans. I visited my family, my parents in France. They were asking me, what are you doing? What you're gonna do? And I was like, well, I'm not doing anything. I don't know what I'm gonna do next. So everyone was kind of scared, for me, but they it's also weird because in that situation you lose your place in society. So something I discovered during this period of time, I realized that the work that you're doing defines you as an individual inside the society. And so at some point you stopped getting phone calls, you stopped getting emails, you stopped getting, some people who you thought were friends, asking you about some stuff, because you're kind of, you become a nobody, and I kind of enjoyed that actually. It was pretty good, to be a nobody for a few months. And so the plan was to do that for more than a few months. And problem is, I spent a summer in France, and at some point it clicked in the summer, and I realized that the only way for me to choose the people who I was going to work with and the project I was going to work on was to start a company. It was not solving the money problem, unfortunately, but that was okay because that was my third priority, and I was thinking, if we are able at some point to raise a little bit of cash and pay ourselves, even if it's not right away, it should be fine. And so that's what we did. So I'll stop there because I don't want to talk too much, but I don't know if you have questions.
No, that's great. I didn't want to interrupt you because it's a fantastic story of how you got to starting this brand new company, which is called Dagger. And
that's right.
It's you, Solomon, and you have a third co-founder, correct?
Yep. Yeah. So the third co-founder is Andrea Luzzardi. So we basically sat down to get. So we were always in contact with Andrea Luzzardi and Solomon Hikes, and I think they had the same problem than me. They were planning the next thing, and they were not sure what it was going to be. And so I was the first in the trio to say, I'll start a company, are you in or not, basically. And so I'm doing it. And so we talked about it seriously, and so Andrea followed, and then a bit later Solomon followed, and it was the three of us looking for an idea. It was also weird to not. There were a lot of things that were weird. When you start a company, you're every time you talk about your idea to someone, it sounds like a bad idea every single time. Like, because until you get users and until you get some sort of, even if you're still pre-market fit, you need to show some needs, some verification of your product idea to people. If you just show up and say, hey, we just started yesterday and we have this wonderful idea, it's usually, the answer in front of that is, well, all right, okay, cool, well, good luck, And so, to the name of the podcast, the Trailbreaker, I think that was another weird thing about that, which is, to me, that was about breaking the trail, in a sense that every single people out there were telling me, oh, you should accept this offer, you should work for that company, this company, I'm going to intro you to someone, you should join them, blah, blah, blah. Why? Because everyone was looking at me as a VP of engineering or some other related work where you're leading an engineering team. And it's kind of where people expect you to be. It's natural. You have experience doing that, and you should do that. That's it. You should not take a risk and start a company. It doesn't make any sense in your situation. And because they didn't take into account my personal priorities. And so, we just started this company. We did Y Combinator in Mountain View, which is a startup incubator, in late early 2019. So we got into the program at the end of 2018. At the time, we haven't raised any money. We were just getting into the program, getting some basic funding from them. We started to do the regular program with other people. It was really refreshing because I was with fresh grads who just left their university to start something. I was with some other experienced people who already had revenues from all over the world, actually, not just California. And so, it was really refreshing to all be in a room, all everyone was different, working on a different project, and we were actually the less advanced one, because every time we were doing a round table, people were like, well, we have 1 million in revenue a year, we are trying to increase to 40% this year, blah blah blah, we need help. And then some other people were like, well, we have this product that solves X, we are trying to acquire more users, and then when it was us, we were saying, well, we are originally from Dagger, we are looking for an idea. And so that was really weird. So I had the feeling that we were breaking the trail entirely, no problem. But it was good. I mean, I don't regret it. And while I went through that, I was feeling that I was at the right place with the right people. And that was feeling really, really good.
Such a cool story. And I don't know if you're able to talk about what Dagger does. I don't know where the company's at in terms of being able to talk about itself. But if you can, what does Dagger do?
Of course, yeah. So the product isn't launched, but it's actually available in private alpha, and I can give access to anyone. If anyone who's listening to the show is interested to get access, just mention the podcast in the description, and I'll give access right away. So it's available at dagger.io, dagger.io. It's a modern CICD framework. So what it does, it helps you deploy your code. So every single tech company who's producing some software needs to deploy it, to also deploy it locally on a machine and to the cloud, need to share staging environments, need to manage a production environment. All of that is very complex. Every single company has a different internal platform, and we want to make that very easy for people to do. So we are doing to CICD what Docker did to containers, basically. So that's the TLDR.
Very cool. Very cool.
And sorry, CICD, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I didn't want to be too technical. CICD stands for continuous integration and continuous delivery. So it's the fancy term to say deploying your code.
Perfect. Thank you. Because for even folks who work in the space with people like you, I learn something new every day. There's no way that I can keep up. So I'm sure some of my listeners would appreciate that definition. So look, Sam, I am so thankful that you chose to join the podcast and to put yourself out there and break another trail. And if you were nice enough to share that Dagger's information and obviously open it up to folks who want to check it out. If folks want to reach out directly to you, how might they find you?
They can just send me an email, sam, S-A-M, at dagger.io. And, anyone can reach out for anything, even follow up about this conversation. It's a topic that is very interesting to me. And I'm always willing to dig into that topic with other people. If anyone feels that my story kind of rings a bell and some of those things can be applied to them, really happy to help anyone going through that, because it's pretty difficult. But I also heard that this kind of stuff happens every 10 years in a career usually. Well, we'll see what the next one will look like. But at least I'll be happy to help anyone who needs it.
Well, I think that folks would be wise to shoulder tap you and hear a little more about what your journey has actually been like. So, look, my friend, thank you very much for joining the show, and all the best with taking Dagger to the next level.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this and inviting me.
All right. Have a good day.
Thank you. You as well.
The Trailbreaker podcast is created by Aaron Feinberg with production support provided by Michael Morey. More interviews and videos can be found at aaronfeinberg.com.